Hello YouTube, Dave here again. In today's video I want to do something a little bit different. I've been having this channel now for about 3 years at this point, and I've had a few questions asked of me along the way, and a lot of times I just tend to refer to them or answer them in the comments or private messages or things like that that I get. But I think they might make for some interesting topics for videos. So today I want to go over a couple of them, kind of combine them because they're related and one of them would make for a pretty short video. But I've had people in the past ask me two separate things, one of which is what's the process that I go for when I come up with my reviews for adventures or products or things along those lines. And the second one, which is the much more involved question, is why don't I use numerical scores at the end of my reviews to indicate how much I like or dislike a product? So I want to answer both of those today. I'm going to start off with the shorter and easier question of what is the process that I go through in order to review a product. So the first thing is it's kind of important to read through stuff. And I don't necessarily always have time to read the entire adventure from cover to cover or source book from cover to cover, but I try to read as much of it as I can. To this effect, I usually try to have first impressions videos where I get the product, the adventure specifically is where I tend to use the first impression in the past. So what I tend to do is just flip through it sort of at a cursory glance, read over a little bit of information but not anything too deep or thorough, and just make a video of my first impressions. And it's interesting to do that and then see what my actual full review comes out for, because a lot of times those first impressions end up changing kind of drastically from what I perceived versus what actually ended up being in the body of my review. I think one of the other important things that I try to do is to avoid other people's videos or reviews. The main reason for that is that I want my opinions to be my opinions and not influenced by other people's. For example, something that I may not consider to be an important detail, somebody else may bring up in a review that I could kind of become influenced by, and something that didn't bother me when I read it myself might become an issue that I start to develop because somebody else had mentioned something. That hasn't really happened, but again, I want everything that I present, the information that I do, to be genuine and just from me. This even carries over to other types of videos. Like back in December, for anybody who watches Pro Jared, he does a series called D&December, which is really awesome, and I really love the videos. One of the ones that he ended up doing was a video defending 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, a couple weeks before that video came out, I was in the process of working on my 4th edition retrospective, which included the fourth part, or the final part, which was going to be sort of like a post-mortem of the edition and trying to come up with reasons why I actually liked it and try to defend it a little bit, because I think it got a little bit too much hate that it doesn't necessarily deserve. So to that effect, I didn't want to watch his video until I completed mine and filmed mine, which ended up being like 3 weeks later because of just the amount of time it took to get the other parts out. So, like I said, I try to come at it from a purely subjective point from myself, and I don't want to like mimic or mirror what other people say. If it happens unintentionally, like if somebody brings up a point in one of their videos that I bring up in one of mine, I want it to be because it's something that we both noticed on our own and not something that I'm just mimicking from somebody else's review. As for the second question, why I don't use numerical scores when I talk about gaming products, a lot of it has to do with the fact that when it comes to gaming specifically, I don't feel like numerical scores work. And a lot of this has to do with the way video games are rated, and this is kind of where I draw inspiration from. Because initially I wanted to actually include numerical scores, but I look back when I was younger in the mid-90s, numerical scores actually seemed to be genuinely useful. And a lot of the time, a lot of these ones will be rated from a scale of 0 to 10, which is what I think is one of the more one of the better versions of numerical scores. I don't think a rating out of 5 is necessarily gives you enough range to kind of get across your real ideas on what it's like. But back when I was younger, if a game got a 6.5 to a 7.5 out of 10, they still had the potential to be good games. In fact, these games were usually ones that made for really fun rentals. And nowadays, it seems like if a game gets anything less than 8.5 out of 10, it's considered to be a terrible game. An example of this is one of the games I recently picked up for the Wii U, which was Star Fox Zero. Now, that's a game that a lot of people say was critically panned and didn't do well as far as reviews and things like that go, but I was looking up the average score it was given, and the average score is a 7.1 out of 10, which I still consider to be perfectly playable. So using that sort of as a guideline and a template, I just find that if I were to provide numerical scores for reviews that I do, people may pay less attention to what I have to say in the video and focus more on the score. Another incident that really drove home my decision not to use numerical scores was the incident with Fallout 4. In which a well-known video game reviewer gave the game what I consider to be a fair score. And this was, I think, for the PC version. He gave it like a 7 out of 10 because Fallout 4 for the PC was full of horrible glitches, some of which were potentially game-breaking. Some make it almost unplayable, and, you know, to his point, the game really wasn't anything new. It was just sort of the same as all the different versions of Fallout 3, so he gave it what I consider to be a fair score. Then the people of Rooster Teeth, a company which I used to love and have a huge amount of respect for, made this scathing video, which was served no other purpose than to try to discredit this guy, saying that he lowballed the game. All the time they're wearing like the Pip-Boys from the game, and the video was sponsored by Bethesda. So it just felt really shallow, and it actually got me to the point where I completely I unsubscribed from Rooster Teeth. I stopped watching Red vs. Blue. I have no intention on really getting any of the newer stuff or DVDs. I'm done with them, and it's all over numerical scores in a review. So what I want from my reviews is to allow the information that I present to speak for itself. I want you as the viewer, if you're going to take anything out of my review, I want it to be based off of the points that I raise and not because of a number that I put at the end. At the end of the day, I want you guys to make your own decisions based off of the information that you have available to you, and I just find that the information available is better if it's presented in verbal form than just through numbers. For example, if I were to give Hoard of the Dragon Queen a numerical score, I would probably end up giving it a 6.5 out of 10. The reason for that is I'm looking at this from the point of view of a veteran DM who's been running campaigns since 1999. With that in mind, this is a very linear campaign, but it's supposed to be geared more towards new DMs and new people. The idea being that this may be some people's first ever campaign, and the idea is to make it somewhat linear to begin with, so that DMs can get comfortable with running games before they get into the more open-ended stuff, which happens in Rise of Tiamat. You get a little bit more freedom to do things in that one. But that said, I still like a lot about this campaign, and I would like to go back and one day finally run it all the way through. Now, I made some changes when I ran my version of it, but I still like the story itself. I think the idea of the Cult of the Dragon trying to bring Tiamat to the material plane is a really great idea for a campaign. And some of the encounters that take place in here are really cool. I enjoy the idea of having lower level characters being influential in protecting a town from an attack by the dragon cultists. I think that's really cool. I like the idea of them infiltrating the camps to learn information about the cult, their activities, and what their motivations and goals are, and where they may potentially strike next. I think, again, that's pretty awesome. I like the idea of a long-term journey from one location in the Forgotten Realms to the other. That presents lots of opportunity for role-playing. So there's a lot of really great stuff in here, but it's not presented in the best fashion. For example, I love the idea of the player characters involved in saving the town from an attack by the dragon cultists, but I don't agree with having the player characters stumble on the attack from the outside, seeing this huge dragon flying around the town, and then assuming that the player characters are going to run to the town instead of away from the town when they're first level characters. I think it makes more sense for the player characters to be in the town for a period of time to allow them to interact with the townsfolk, get to actually care about and know some of these NPCs before the attack begins, allowing them to actually have more of an emotional investment in how it turns out. As far as infiltrating the camp goes, the book actively tries to dissuade the player characters from posing as members of the Cult of the Dragon by attacking like a backwatch and stealing their uniforms, saying that if they arrive in uniforms it's going to arouse suspicion. But that may be the natural idea that comes to the player characters, and I don't want to punish them for that. So again, there's just certain things that I would change. but the overall structure I like. So if I present the information that's in the book as, what's going on, and my ideas of how to perhaps improve things, especially for more veteran DMs, I think that makes this more viable. And with a few modifications, this would go from a 6.5 to like a 7.5 if I were to use a numerical score. If I present all that information, but then at the end of the day still present it as a 6.5 out of 10, the idea is that this sucks and nobody's going to want it. So I just really don't like that. Again, I want you to actually make decisions based off of information and not just a couple of numbers that are really arbitrary. So I hope that kind of helps out with sort of like my process, why I do things the way that I do, and hopefully might make you guys look a little bit more closely at things like numerical scores and really kind of decide if they're really all that important, or if you'd rather actually look at the information that's being presented before those scores are given. Anyway, thank you guys very much. If there's any other questions that you want me to answer in video, please comment below, because I would love to have more topics to discuss, and I genuinely enjoy doing stuff like this. So thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.